Hi, my name is Blair Lewis, and this is my case study for the Truman Elementary School. Some information on what I know. So I know that Truman Elementary School houses grades pre-K through 8th grade. It's in a suburban community outside a medium-sized Midwestern city, and the school itself has about 700 total students. From those students, 15% of them qualify for free and reduced lunch, which means that's about 100 of those students. And then 5% of them are ELL students, which speak primarily Spanish. That 5% is approximately 35 students. We also know that reading levels are low when it comes to the percentiles and the median scores. They tend to fall in the mid-50th percentile. Other things I know is that the PTO has voiced negative views of reading instruction, and they would like me to clarify to them why that is. I personally have observed classes and brought in a specialist to make recommendations. I've been at the school for 2 years, and I've been in the district, but not in building even before that, so I know the district fairly well. There is a grant available to address the reading issues, which could be from anywhere from $200,000 to $350,000. I know that the parents' perception is that reading is not taking place at school and that there are a lot of things we need to do to improve. I know what the reading specialist thinks, and I know that the scores are in the mid-50th percentile and constantly decreasing. I need to know what were the demographics of the school over the past few years and how they've changed. So I know that the ELL levels and the free and reduced lunch levels are 15 and 5% respectively, but what were they before that? Is that number increasing? Is it changing? Could that be some type of correlation between the scores decreasing and then a different type of student coming to the school? I am not very familiar with what the BASIL program is for reading that we are using currently, so I need to educate myself on that. I need to know the specific things that students are struggling with on the test. Where on the test are we struggling? Is it with phonics? Is it with reading comprehension? Is it with vocabulary? Where particularly is the breakdown? I also would like to know the subgroups and the demographic breakdowns for the scores. Who in our school is doing well, who in our school is not doing so well. Is there a clear divide? And I would also like to know if we test special ed students, what that breakdown would be. I would also like to know what previous professional development on reading strategies have we done in years past. What do the stakeholders in the community and the teachers feel would be best, and how can we improve their professional development and help them learn better strategies of teaching. The problem is that reading at Truman Elementary School is perceived negatively by the surrounding community. Our stakeholders believe that we are not teaching reading properly, that we're not doing enough of it, and that students are suffering. Reading scores have dropped over the past 3 years. That's a huge problem. And then we need to generate support for the grant in order to overhaul the reading program. So we have an issue of trying to figure out how to generate that support. My proposed plan of action is first to address at the next PTO meeting their concerns and to acknowledge the fact that there is issues that we can address. The second is that I would like to create committees of teachers and of community members and stakeholders that can give me input on a new reading program, since reading is not my specialty. I need to surround myself with people who are experts on reading and can guide me in what they think what programs would be best for our school. I also need a committee who can generate support for the grant and who can help with writing the grant. I need to observe other schools and other districts' reading programs that are successful, especially if there are other districts that are similar to ours. I need to review the data on the demographic and subgroups over time in order to know, has it changed? Has something in our demographics drastically altered or be maybe a cause of these scores. Just because there's a cause doesn't mean we can't fix it or we shouldn't be trying to do something about it, but it would be nice to be able to hone in on maybe some type of reasoning for this change. I'd like to create a plan for professional development and then implement the new reading program, including differentiation of instruction. We need to clearly hit on phonics more and then revise the standards and the curriculum. Once I make a plan for that, then we can create the grant proposal, because all of those things are necessary before you can propose a grant. Strategies for implementation. I believe that creating teams and committees to roll out this new program would be the best, because if you create teams of teachers who support the decision that you've made to change curriculum, then they can teach their friends. It can be their job to then roll it out to 2 or 3 more people, and then they roll it out to 2 or 3 more people. And then once the whole staff is involved, then you can bring everyone together and kind of educate them. I think it's important to be transparent with the stakeholders and say, we need to overhaul this curriculum. This is the plan. This is how we're going to do it. I think it's important to create as many professional development opportunities for all the school personnel. We don't just want reading teachers working on reading. We need the math teachers, and we need social studies, and we need all the elective teachers. We need everyone to kind of jump on board with this. We also need to observe the local communities and similar districts with similar demographics in order to make up a decision to change the program. I feel like I'm doing what's best for students, because by changing the reading program, it's going to be individualized for the needs of each student as well as the needs of a class. So we're talking about differentiation here. Instruction should be flexible, meaning it can change if students are doing well, and then it can slow down if students are struggling. Teachers should have this diagnostic information on their individual students. Just saying that the median score is a 50%, is at the 50th percentile, tells us nothing, because we don't know what specific teachers' classes look like. We don't know what individual students look like. We don't know what ELL versus SPED versus free and reduced lunch versus Caucasian, Black, White, Hispanic, Asian, all of those different breakdowns. We don't know what those scores look like, so the data is meaningless at this moment. Instruction should be balanced and differentiated to challenge advanced students. So that's why it's best for all students. You can challenge those students, give them more difficult readings with still teaching them the same strategies and how to read and how to break down words and phonics. And then you can also give students that struggle with reading books that have less of a demanding vocabulary, less of a higher level thinking and reading comprehension. You can still differentiate and teach reading. My resolution was based on the facts that I saw by going into classrooms and my reading specialist saw. So seeing that instruction was almost always whole group and not into little groups, or even if they were in little groups, they were still not broken down based off of skill level. The development occurs solely in the context of this basal instruction or basal instruction. There's no innovation, it seemed. There was very little instruction of strategic reading. So how to struggle when you are stuck, how to struggle well and then get through it and still learn even though you're struggling. And then how delivery of instruction and content is not aligned with research of what is effective and what's going to help our kids score higher, do better, learn more, and be more successful in life. I was thinking, how is this now just becoming an issue? Was this like a previous principal's goal? How did I not see this? I was also thinking, are teachers given the information of test scores on their individual students? Are they already given that information and I just am not aware of it? Also, what teachers are going to give me pushback on implementing a new reading program? I think it would be nice to talk to them before we roll this out and kind of get a gauge on where they stand. I was feeling nervous to address the PTO because you have to be transparent. I mean, the scores, you can literally see the scores. They're not great. I was frustrated that teachers are not differentiating, and I feel like when you don't differentiate and you just do whole group instruction, it kind of makes you look lazy, even though you're not lazy, or you really do feel like you're doing what's best or do what you think you've learned in school of how to teach, and you haven't gotten any professional development on how to differentiate or how to make small groups. It just doesn't look good from the outside perspective. I'm hopeful because there's a lot we can do to improve, but I'm also worried that we're not going to receive the grant money, just because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that apply for it. I was valuing input from the PTO and other stakeholders. I'm valuing anyone willing to be a part of the committees, to write the grant, to implement the new program, any teachers that are willing to go observe and reach out to other teachers and districts, anyone who has who can help implement and decide which program is going to be best for us. The problems that are still unresolved is what program is best for our school and our demographic. How can we get a breakdown of scores into more specific and helpful subgroups? And then how are we going to get the grant money? How can we write the grant to demonstrate that we know exactly what we want to do with the money, and this is how we're going to implement it? I'm an agent for continuous school improvement by bringing in the reading specialists to come address some concerns and just make sure that we're on the same page of what's really happening in these classrooms. I'm creating committees of stakeholders to apply for the grant, to research reading programs. I want to get some funding to implement some really cool professional development and then help us implement a curriculum that's going to be viable and is going to help us with those reading scores. And then I also am constantly looking at data to see other places we can improve, because even looking at the math scores, I think that there's some improvement that can happen there next. And then I also use the data presented to respond and communicate to the larger community to address their concerns. So I used the data from the reading specialists, from the standardized test scores, and from ELL and free and reduced lunch population in order to communicate to the community that I do see that we are struggling in the reading, and this is my plan of action, and we're going to look at content, look at differentiation, look at professional development, and get our teachers back to where they need to be.